Welcome to EPG Pathshala. Now I will discuss the module entitled Political Participation as Mere Symbolism. In this module, I have discussed that how in practice, in real actual scenario, political participation has become a mere symbolism, just a tokenism for women. They are not substantially given representation in the real politics. Procedurally their number is increasing, but actually in decision making process their percentage is very low. There are pros and cons of this concept because there are some of the examples we have where women are actively working. We have the example of Indira Gandhi in Indian context. Though she is from a political background family, but she has proved herself as Iron Lady. Her decision on the first nuclear test or her stand on Jammu and Kashmir and Bangladesh, the decision of the treaty with USSR reflects that she have taken firm decisions and proved herself. Similarly, if we believe on the political analysis in the recent times, and if it is right, the Muslim women voters have dramatically given vote in favor of BJP. So it is also showing that it is not mere symbolism. Day by day it is increasing, it is becoming from mere to real. They are actively participating, but it will take some time. This will not dramatically happen, and this symbolism will change and they will definitely become a substantive participant. On the 14th April 2008, a 7-month pregnant Minister of Defense shows the Spanish troop for the first time. The first time not only for her but also for other women, all citizens, the army and the democracy in Spain. Camry Chacon, the first woman to have inspected the troops in Spain, was appointed minister within the Spanish socialist cabinet of President Rodrigo Zapatero. The sight of Minister Chacon inspected the troop on the first day in office with her rounded belly covered by a white maternity blouse is a picture that Spaniards and other people outside Spain will not easily forget. It occupied the front page of several national and international newspapers. Why is that picture so powerful to attract people and media attention? At the first glance, it shows maternity, symbol of womanhood, in an unusually represented position of leadership and command, and the army, symbol of masculinity as associated with physical strength and defense. This time in an also unusually represented situation of subordination and obedience towards a woman in a position of supreme authority. The pregnant minister is invading a space that tend to be associated with men. This picture could also be attracted to people's attention due to the suggestion of a possible clash between life as symbolized by maternity and death as symbolized by the army. It turned upside down socially ingrained expectation about the role of women and men and the respective hierarchy between the sexes that are still very much present and perpetuated through dominant cultural codes. After this illustration, now the question arises how democracies become more representative in the sense that they have incorporated women in ways which ensures that their interests are advocated and considered. What mechanism exists to facilitate gender balanced policies and how effective are those mechanisms? Annie Phillips points out that post-industrial democracies are deficient because they fail to represent women's interests and needs adequately. They neither include women in position of power nor routinely incorporate gender perspective in the policy process. Comparative research shows that there is generally a pattern of decreasing number of women as decision-making hierarchies are ascended. There is a functional division of labor between men and women respectively, whereby women are more likely to specialize in soft and less prestigious policy areas such as health, cultural affairs, education and social welfare, while men dominate the traditionally more prestigious areas of economic management, foreign affairs and home ministry. These patterns raise the important question of what, if any, influence women representatives have and where and how they are able to exercise it. In practice, the opportunities for existing and exercising rights are limited, and women's access to decide their own future is restricted due to the lack of free movement, exposure, patriarchal forces and values. This is similar to and is an extension of the situation obtained in home, where women are consulted rarely in important economic matters like purchase and sale of property or spending patterns of the income. Even in the public sphere, women's participation making level is only marginal. Women presence in assemblies. Women are often more likely than men to face practical barriers in entering politics, including a paucity of financial resources, lower level of education, less access to information, greater family responsibility, and a deprivation of rights that have left them with fewer opportunity to acquire political experience. With the exception of the close relatives of male politicians, women generally lack the political networks necessary for electoral success. However, political participation and grassroots democracy have been strengthened considerably by the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments that have created new democratic institutions for local governance. Of the 28 lakh women elected panchayat representatives, around 10 lakh are estimated to be women. The average of women representatives in panchayat across the country is 36.94%. On the other hand, a few states have gone beyond the mandate of 33% and provided more reservation for women. For example, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Rajasthan have reserved 50% seat for women in panchayat. The Constitution's 110th Amendment Bill 2009 provides reservation for women from 33% to 50% in Panchayati Raj institutions. Nevertheless, the matter of concern is that women representation always been criticized as the representation is only a puppet show and the master is the Pradhan Pati, husband of female representative, or the Pradhan Putra, son of the female representative. On this issue, Mrs. Shailaja Singh, Gram Pradhan, Masuria village, Balia, Uttar Pradesh, stated that it is not possible that suddenly women will have full command on all the power structure and decision making processes. So assistance of her husband or son is the real representation of UN Women's campaign He for She. Gradually women will achieve full command in this respect. In India, women have not found adequate representation in Lok Sabha. The percentage of elected women Lok Sabha members have never extended 12%. The presence of women in the upper house has also been only slightly higher overall, probably due to indirect election and nomination of some women members. It was highest in 1990 at 15.5% and shows a declining trend thereafter. It is significant to note that the deputy chairman of the Rajya Sabha, at least for more than 25 years, has been a woman. Yet women face increasingly competition from male politicians for nomination. The number of contesting election has always been low. The highest number of women contestants has been 636 in 2014. The losing seats are offered to women candidates by the respective political parties. This scenario is also typical at the state level. Sources reveal that the highest percentage of women in the state legislative assembly has been 10.8% in 1957 in Madhya Pradesh. Generally, there seems to be no correlation between literacy and female representation. Kerala, with its high literacy rate, has a low state average of 3.6%. The representation of women in Union Council of Ministers has also remained very low. Thus, the representation of women at various levels in service, representative bodies and judiciary remain grossly inadequate. The reservation of women in panchayat and state legislature, one can see that initially most political parties agreed to introduce 33% reservation for women in parliament and state legislature, but soon doubts surfaced. The objection focused around two main issues: the issue of overlapping quotas for women in general and those for women of lower caste, the issue of elitism. The bill was first introduced by Deve Gowda, led by United Front government. The bill has already introduced 5 times but is stalled each time. However, the Rajya Sabha on March 9, 2010 took a historical step by voting 191 for and 1 against to amend the constitution, providing 1/3 reservation in parliament and state legislatures for women. Till today, bill is not passed by the Lok Sabha and ratified by 1/2 of the state before it come into effect. Barriers to women political participation are often magnified in post-conflict societies where may be characterized by militarization, a violation of security situation, or the political domination of small social group of elites, the absence of well-established political parties, the failure to include women in peace negotiation, and other limiting factors which confirm that political participation by women has become mere symbolism. Women and political party. Now we will understand what is the correlation between these two factors. In Indian politics, women continue to lack effective political power in parties and in state. Women access to power is still mediated by their relationship to male kin and is often indirect and symbolic. Parties have done little to provide women access to the network and resources that would enable them to ascend the ranks of party hierarchies. One of the significant questions arises concerning the relationship between women's electoral support for particular parties and these parties' commitment to eradicate gender inequality. Parties have increasingly directed their appeals at women by addressing their distinctive interests and identities and by involving women in electoral campaigns. The Bharatiya Janata Party, Telugu Desam Party, the Dravid Munnetra Kadagam have not only viewed women as vote banks but also made them figureheads and spokespersons for their parties, and often very militant ones. And yet they have generally not offered them lasting institutional powers nor rights that would increase their autonomy from their families. The BJP has mobilized women around Hindu nationalist themes but has interspersed these with displays of its secular commitments. As a centralist party with historically secular socialist leaning, Congress has claimed women's support through its commitment to minority rights and secularism. However, these parties' ideology have not determined their position on gender inequality. For women's rights activities, the major failure of Congress party resulted from its ambivalent stand towards secularism. When Congress tried to pass the Hindu Code Bill providing equal rights to men and women within the family in 1944, it encountered deep-rooted opposition from conservative religious groups which viewed secular law as undermining religious and patriarchal authority. The bill Congress passed in the mid-1950s was deeply compromised by concession to the opposition. During the early period of its ascent, BJP was especially keen to distinguish itself from the Congress party. Its support for the Uniform Civil Code in 1990 was in part a response to Rajiv Gandhi's handling of the Shah Bano case. Like all political parties, BJP also make certain promises that it does not keep. For instance, it did not implement reservation for women, which it pledged to be at election time. The relatively small number of women in political office is a reflection of biases on the part of political parties than that of electorate. It may be that parties only run women in elections they consider winnable. If they felt that the electorate was less likely to vote for a woman, all else being equal, it made sense to run women in a seat where victory was more likely. Venkaiah Naidu claimed, "We want to field more women candidates, but there are few of them." However, the data does not clear about Naidu's contention that women do not win elections. The percentage of women candidates who were elected was 51.9% in 1996, 46.9% in 1998 and 60% in 1999. The Congress party nominated more women than the BJP in every election. However, a large proportion of women candidates were elected from the BJP than from the Congress. 3 successive governments dating back to 1996 have supported the 81st Amendment Bill guaranteeing at least 33% reservation for women in Parliament and the state legislative assemblies. However, although most political parties have endorsed the bill in their election manifestos, they have not supported its passage in Parliament. Election and women leadership, how it is correlated, I will discuss this in this section. Feminists argue that even after getting full citizenship in law, women continue to suffer from subjection in their social life. From 1960s and 1970s, the status of women in society and politics has become the center of attention. Earlier, it was usually thought that after establishing legal equality of men and women, women were not left with any issue of complaint. After the extension of right to vote to women, there were some studies on voting behavior. It was found that women's participation in voting was lower in comparison to men. To explain this situation, it was argued that women were largely interested in private and domestic affairs. They were less interested in politics and public affairs, and probably they had no time to attend these matters. In the sphere of international politics, the representation of women is still meager. In November 1990, 34 heads of government of European countries gathered to sign the historic Charter of Paris for the new Europe. The gathering marked the end of the Cold War. In newspaper headlines, it was described as the end of an era, but feminists ask which era had come to an end. In any case, it was not an end of the patriarchal era. In the group photo of these 34 heads of government, only 2 women could be spotted after a thorough search. These are Gro Brundtland, Prime Minister of Norway, and Margaret Thatcher, Prime Minister of Britain. 2 days after this conference, Mrs. Thatcher also resigned and a man replaced her as Prime Minister. In this situation, what is the consequence of granting full political rights to women if their representation in public life remains so negligible? In countries outside Europe and America, women representation is very insignificant at the level of political authority. Opportunities are not open to women as their share in these positions continue to be very inadequate. In India, women's voting rights increased from 37% in 1952 to a high of 68% in 1984. They fell in 47% in 1991. Women participation in panchayat is constrained by a dearth of financial resources, the lack of independent staffing, and a reliance on an unaccountable bureaucracy. Opposition to the 81st Amendment Bill guaranteeing at least 33% reservation for women in the panchayat and legislative assemblies from some segments of women movement partly reflects a distrust of political parties. These include quotas could form a ceiling rather than a minimum. Women candidates might be malleable because of their dependence on male leaders. Reservation treat women like a homogeneous group, which increase the likelihood of the BB White Brigade of educated upper caste women being elected, particularly because the bill does not provide for sub quotas of OBCs. Similar trends of successful unmarried women in politics can be visualized. While looking at women's leadership, one could find that women who have elected to parliament without the support of an organized constituency have been few in number and relatively ineffective in challenging gender inequality. The power of women MPs, Member of Parliament, is generally very limited. They are expected to strictly adhere to party politics, and none of them have placed question concerning gender inequality high on their agendas. Although they have regular contacts with women wings of political parties and with the party leadership on issues regarding the family, they do not have much to do with autonomous women's organizations. Consider the role of some women who have emerged as power brokers within Indian politics today. They include the Italian-born Sonia Gandhi, who was positioned to become Prime Minister in 2004. Jairam Jayalalitha, who heads the regionally based AIADMK and is the former Chief Minister of the southern state of Tamil Nadu. Sheila Dikshit, former Chief Minister of Delhi. Vasundhara Raje, former Chief Minister of Rajasthan, and Rabri Devi, the former Chief Minister of Bihar. All these women rose to power as appendages to men rather than through movements or institutional channels. Rabri Devi only emerged from her role as housewife when her husband was imprisoned, and she replaced him as the Chief Minister of Bihar. Sheila Dikshit rose of power on the coattails of her powerful father-in-law Uma Shankar Dikshit. Vasundhara Raje Scindia is the daughter of Vijay Raje Scindia and is of royal ancestry. Jayalalitha is the mistress of actor turned politician M.G. Ramachandran, whom she succeeded as Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. Sonia Gandhi is the widow of the former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and the daughter-in-law of the former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Hence, in our country, these illustrations reflect mere symbolism of women political participation. One can utter the names of famous few who hold the higher positions due to their political family background or any other type of influential political support. However, women experience more constraint than men in gaining political power. India's women leaders may be important symbols of the nation. In the absence of support from organized movements, they have not become powerful in their own rights. In such a realm, their connection to male family members assumes paramount importance. Nor do these women share common ideas, values and agendas. Their role in bringing down governments may be as close to as they will ever come to collaborating. Their deepest commitments are to their parties and to themselves, not to the collective interest of women. At the present time, the question of how to engage in elections selectively and creatively poses an important challenge for the women's movement. Symbolism here is used in the sense of not being effective. There is a marginal achievement in this regard. While analyzing the term symbolism, one can refer to Majur writings, Majur analysis of French equal employment policies. Symbolic reforms occur when policy designed to address certain social problems fail to effectively solve those problems. Symbolic policies would serve a symbolic purpose of image making for politicians, but they appear destined to have little real impact. Symbolism is then seen as the opposite of substantial, which focuses on the fact that something really substantial is being achieved. There is the absence of a concerted and assertive women movement focusing precisely at the ascertainment of equitable political participation of women in all segments of political life in our country. It proved congenial for the custodians of Indian politics immediately after independence to gloss over the gender perspective of the government and politics in country without being held accountable for this act of omission. So they have introduced some of the reforms to increase women political participation. Political participation in particular seems to be limited for at least two reasons. The tone and substance of the constitutional provisions apparently remain confined to only those aspects of women's development which would have probably been devoted to them in the course of increased awakening amongst the people. The constitutional provisions happen to be of foundational nature, acting as the signpost for the politicians and the policy makers to evolve sustainable and suitable and innovative measures to ensure greater role and participation of women in the decision-making institutions and processes in the country. On the other hand, the long years of enjoyment of domination over the woman by men is probably dissuading the dominant section of society to cease from enacting any innovative law or taking any path-breaking decision sanctioned by constitution to catapult the woman in mainstream of the Indian politics. Two contemporary issues, Uniform Civil Code and reservation of seat for women in national parliament and state legislature, have redefined the contours of feminist politics in India. The controversy over the Uniform Civil Code began with the 1985 Supreme Court judgment granting financial support to Sahabanu, who once divorced demanded maintenance from her husband under a provision in secular criminal law. This verdict provoked the Muslims, who characterized this interference by the Supreme Court as having fiddled with their personal law. Law could be an aid once the decision is negotiated at the political level. Otherwise, a mere intervention of the court is too weak to bypass the hegemonic patriarchal social structure. The issue of reservation of seat for women has been already discussed above. The urge towards Uniform Civil Code continued to remain a mere slogan unless it is debated at the grassroots level. Similarly, the reservation bill cannot ensure political equality for all. It simply seeks to expand the number of women in the political decision making. Now I will conclude that though there are so many illustrations that women are not giving that much participation in politics, major political parties are not giving important seats, important constituencies for in elections to women candidate, and they are also given those seats in which they are they may fail or they cannot win. So this type of tendencies are there in political parties. We have the examples of BV brigade in politics and also unmarried women brigade in politics, or those women influential role, those who are already from a political background. But with all these examples, there are some positive things is also there. We cannot say it is only symbolism. Constitutional provisions are there. There are some issues, but in this section we have to work from symbolism. It's have to make from mere to real. It has to make, and for that purpose, I will say that I will again quote the quotation of Ms. Shailaja Singh, the Gram Pradhan of Masuria village Balia, Uttar Pradesh, that it is not suddenly possible that women will have the full control and command on all decision making structure and power and administrative measures. Gradually they can do, and if in this process their son or husband or any other male family member will assist them, then it is just the reflection of the UN Women's campaign of he for she, and gradually they will be the part of actual decision making process, and then from the procedural participation to substantial participation can be gained. Thank you.